Recording in progress.
There we go. It's the first time I actually remembered to wait for it. Okay, today we welcome as our guest speaker Delia Ferreira Rubio, and I'm going to read her bio. Dr. Ferreira Rubio holds a PhD in law. She is an expert on and has widely consulted on anti-corruption and transparency-related issues with international organizations and NGOs. She's worked on projects promoting greater transparency and accountability in the areas of political campaign and party financing. She served as the chair of Transparency International and as chief advisor to several representatives and senators at National Congress, advised the Constitutional Committee of the House of Representatives and Senate in Argentina. She's the author of numerous publications, including on democratic culture and political institutions, comparative politics, government by decree, public and parliamentary ethics, political financing, and electoral systems. This is my nerd home. So the talk, which Dr. Ferreira Rubio asked me to say, which was completely written by her. She is not a hologram, she is a human being. I have touched her, I've given her a kiss. She is a real person. This is all real. The topic is the impact of AI and algorithmic tools on democracy. Technological developments have always had a strong impact on the characteristics and functioning of politics and government. New ways of doing politics, new administrative capacities, new channels of participation, new capabilities for control and surveillance, new forms of communication, and much more have marked the evolution of democracy. Social media, algorithmic tools, and artificial intelligence pose new challenges for society and for democracies. They undoubtedly offer opportunities to improve how democracies function, but they also present risks that erode the principles and foundations on which the democratic model is built. Disinformation, polarization, surveillance, manipulation, discrimination, violations of rights, and concentration of power are among these challenges. It is our collective and individual responsibility to ensure the responsible development and application of these tools, balancing technological innovation with respect for essential rights and the fundamental principles of democracy. Dr. Ferreira Rubio.
For the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here in person. Last time I was here through media from Berlin in the COVID time, talking about money and politics in that time. And we are going to talk, I'm short. I have assumed that many years ago. It's okay? Yeah, no artificial intelligence here. We are going to talk about a topic that, apart from the World Cup, is top in the public agenda around the world. Every day, you can go to papers around the world, and you will see something related to AI, surveillance, the use of AI in wars, and things like that. And, of course, personal rights, freedoms, etc. We are going to talk about this, but before going into the topic, I think I must show what I think about democracy, because democracy is elections, but it is also many other things apart from elections. It is participation. Of course, it's elections. No? You have representation, elections, local government, division of powers. You have also rule of law as something very important. The independent judiciary, that's part of democracy. The fact that we have a parliament passing laws that are controlled and control the executive. This whole thing has also to do with democracy. You have also rights, freedoms. What's democracy? Freedom of expression, freedom of information, equality, inclusiveness. You can fulfill pages on what democracy is. It's not only elections. So when I am talking about the impact of technology, algorithmic tools, generative AI, the ChatGPT, to put it simple, or autonomous agents, I am talking of the impact of these tools vis-a-vis all these aspects. In particular, in elections, we have been talking here in Argentina for many times about the electronic voting. That's another thing. That's not an algorithm deciding who is elected. It's another thing. So today I'm not talking about electronic voting, which is the start of my affair with technology and democracy. But that was more than 15 years ago. Now I'm talking of this particularly what we call new tools, artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? What do we include in this concept? And how these many, many tools interfere, for good or evil, with all these aspects of democracy. And by the way, democracy is not doing very well in the last time. This is the Economist Intelligence Unit Index of Democracy. And as you see, for instance, in Latin America, only 2 countries, Uruguay and Chile, are ranked as full democracies. The others are flawed democracies. But we have lots of red with hybrid regimes, the yellow ones, and autocratic regimes. The majority of the population of the world today live in autocratic regimes. So we are privileged, although we are not a full democracy according to this index. And I use this, there are many indexes about the decline of democracy. This is the only one in 2020 published this year regarding past year. This is the only one that is optimistic, because for the first time in 15 years, they register a little slight improvement that has to do with Gen Z mobilization in Asia, in many countries in Asia and some countries in Africa. So one of the many items they measured has to do with participation. And those movements improved the participation in the whole world, but it was very slight. But this is the only index that reflects an improvement in this year after 15. The other ones are going down and down and down and down. So it's important to have this in mind. But democracy doesn't operate in a vacuum. Democracies and government in general operates in a context. And there has been lots of enormous changes in technology across the history that has changed the way in which governments operate, democracies or monarchies or whatever, the participation of population, who really had the right to participate, how they can participate, how can they access information, how can they be informed, how they can they organize themselves or mobilize themselves. And all these technologies, which are very old, starting with the printing press, means huge changes in democracy. So government in that time, even the Greeks used a machine to select some magistrates. It was called the Klerioticon, which was a stone with places to put the tablets and things like that, very complicated. But even in that time, this technology means that everyone that was considered a citizen in that time, which is not the broad universal citizenship we have now, even those were selected by this kind of machines intervening and opening the participation. So think about the TV. It changed completely politics in your country. Absolutely, it was amazing. Campaigns changed, elections changed, information changed. Everybody saw, okay, the newspapers are out, we are going to be informed by this. But then we have the smartphones. Then we have the platforms, social media. Imagine the world before social media, before Facebook, before Twitter, before the smartphones that we have put off. All this was already a challenge for democracy, and we survived. We managed how to organize this. So the important question here is, how did we face these challenges from the technological point of view in the past, and how can we learn some lessons on how are we going to manage these new technologies? The difference is that these technologies are being what we call the 4S characteristics: the speed of development, the scale of these technologies, the scope they cover, and the sophistication. Because we can see how the printing press produce books. We can see, we can understand without being a technician how it works. Probably less about the TV or the radio or the telegraph, we can see and understand. But now we have black boxes. We don't know what's in not even in the ChatGPT that we are using. And I will use ChatGPT as a general name, no? Including Claude, which is my favorite, and Mistral and all that. But the important thing is that now we don't know, even the engineers that design these tools say, we cannot explain why, if we have designed and trained them correctly, they are making hallucinations. That is, committing mistakes or being biased. We told the program not to be biased. Okay, they are discriminating people because of the color of the skin. So even the designers, the engineers preparing this software, they are softwares, have this impossibility to get or grasp the real functioning of these tools. And probably you know this guy. Who knows this guy? He's very famous. He was Ned Ludd. Yeah, his family name gave name to a whole movement against industrial revolution. And still today, this figure is used in artificial intelligence conversation to name those people that have adopted a complete opposition, let's say, towards these tools. These tools shouldn't be created, designed, used, applied, etc. We want to destroy the tools. That was what Ned did in 1779. He's famous. He burned 2 textile machines in UK. And that's why he became the leader of this opposition. I would say that something is changing in society, because 1 year ago, the conversation about Ludditz was just a reference to the past. And it seems that in society, everybody was in favor of artificial intelligence tools and the use, and we were in a fever for AI. But nowadays, particularly in the US, there are lots of important movements, social movements, to stop AI or to stop the data centers that are used in order for these models, language models, to work. A law has just been passed in Tennessee last week, which puts a moratorium on the building of data sets in the state. Why? Because of the energy they are consuming. So we are told these models will solve our climate change problem. But that might be. But at the same time, they are creating other problems because the water they consume in order to refrigerate the panels and also the energy they consume are far bigger than or greater than the energy consumed by a whole city, for instance. So prices are going up and all the accompanying problems. But nevertheless, these tools are here to stay. We are not going to stop them. What we have to do is to have the adequate attitude to others. We have to learn what they are. We have to make them or their use transparent so everybody knows, as Amy said, I am not an avatar here. I haven't prepared this with AI. If I had, I should say, this presentation has been made with AI. So everybody knows the origin. When I write a book, I have to say, this has been written with AI or by AI. I was telling at the table a story 2 weeks ago. I went to a bookshop here and I found a book about artificial intelligence and hypocrisy. And the name of the author was a Korean name, like Byung, for instance. So I say, okay, I buy it. New thing. And then, before starting reading it, I went to Google and find out who this guy was. He doesn't exist. He is an AI-written book on social things, hypocrisy, and the other one is on democracy, written by prompts, so questions asked to ChatGPT, by 2 engineers in Italy, who decided to put this name, which is attractive, sounds strange, but they didn't say, this is AI. Then you have to go and find out that this guy doesn't exist, it's an AI product, and it doesn't say that in the book. So one thing we have to do is to acknowledge when we are using these technologies, and to learn that these technologies just have the name intelligence. Many of you use Excel for many years. We never thought or said that Excel was an intelligent accountant. It is a software, and great if you use it, and I would say that Excel is much more accurate than ChatGPT. So we need to learn, we need to understand how these technologies work. We need to make responsible use of these technologies. And we have to remember always that these are tools. And when we talk about tools, we are talking about something, the use of which is essential. The use is the key. Because they can be used for good or evil, as I said. Some of these technologies are double-used, even in the good side, let's say, in terms of military activities or civil activities. They can be incorporated in arms. They are being used today in arms, determine targets and shooting without human intervention. So we have to keep that in mind. The users are not creating the tools, but we have a responsibility as the designers, as the ones who deploy the instruments, as the owners of the companies, as the ones that prepare the data sets that will train these technologies. These are tools, and we have to keep that in mind. I will use and afterwards, I have already told Kitty, you can access the PowerPoint with all this information. This is the definition. We can write books about what AI is. This is the definition of the EU AI Act, which is the most important regulation, hard law that we have in this moment. And it is very clear. Systems, AI systems are programs, are software, machine-based systems. That's the first word in the definition of AI for this regulation. They have explicit or implicit objectives because those who design the tools designs them with a purpose. And we have no access. We have to discover what the purpose was in case. But this is clear. These tools have objectives that has been determined by humans. Humans are always there. They are the ones who design, the owners of the companies, the users, etc. And these particular tools have the possibility to generate outputs. Outputs that have different forms. They can produce content, voice, images, content, books, predictions. Very important. When they predict something, they can affect us if they predict wrong. Recommendations, the same. Can you access the credit or the loan? Yes or no, according to the prediction. The machine told us, the computer told that. That's the answer from insurance companies or banks. And of course, in terms of hiring people. Nowadays, there is a kind of war between people looking for a job presenting CVs prepared by AI, CVs that are read by AI in order not to bother the human resources manager. So there is a competition, a tension there between two AIs being used in different forms, and this can produce decisions. Decisions is, for me, the most dangerous part of this. When we delegate decisions in algorithmic formulas, which are not exact and they don't pretend to be exact, they are probabilistic methods applied to big data that has been used to train these tools. And of course, they can influence physical or virtual environments completely, as we are already seeing, including our lives, our freedoms, the way governments work around the world. And these programs are trained on data. At the beginning, these tools and the name artificial intelligence was created exactly in July 70 years before, 70 years ago. The artificial intelligence has my same age. And we keep on developing this kind of different tools under this umbrella of artificial intelligence. But in November 2022, there was absolutely a moment of great expectation when ChatGPT was delivered and deployed for everyone to use it. And in that moment, we were explained that these marvelous intelligent tools based on algorithms or algorithmic calculations had been trained on everything that has been published, registered, painted, said, etc., by humans all along history. And they were trained mainly on data that was available on internet. But if that is, and that is the case, we have to know that the data available is not exactly in the same proportion according to cultures, languages, etc. And here you have the statistic of how, what's the proportion of languages used in these data sets that are being used to train these tools. And as you see, English, of course, is the big one, and Spanish is only 2% of the material available in databases accessed by these tools in order to produce afterwards the response. Imagine other languages, Asian languages, African languages. And with language, we know that goes culture and goes our customs, our values. So this is important to have in mind. And if you have, I have used almost all even the new Chinese one announced last week, the Kimi, which is very good. But if you use them and you interact with these tools in Spanish, in English, in French, and I know no Asian language or African language, but I would try, the same prompt in different languages produce different results. And this is part of the key, the clue behind this, the data sets. This was the origin, things that has already been published, etc. And if you remember at the very beginning, ChatGPT and the others says, this has been updated up to this year. So when they started, for instance, it was the time of the Russia invasion on Ukraine. If you ask about that war, there was no answer. Or there was absolutely nonsense because the update has been before that war. Nowadays, they are using search techniques to go to internet immediately. So they are trying to keep the information update going to internet. And the other two resources of information they are using, and this is dangerous, is synthetic data. In areas where there is not such big data in order to train the algorithms, scientists have started using AI to create data on the data available in order to have more cases. For instance, cancer investigation or some strange illness, very few data. So we use this data. With AI, we multiplicate the cases, we create twins, and then we train the tool with this, which is synthetic data. And the other thing that is being incorporated and produce certain biases and mistakes is the own answers from the chats. So as you have, those of you who have interacted with them, you ask a question. The other day we asked about the encyclica from Pope Leo, and the answer, it was Claude is, no, Claude not, it was Gemini, I think. The answer was, there is no Leo Pope. And we said, with the ones we were checking, yes, there is a Pope Leo, Leo 14. And it insists, no, there is no Pope Leo. The Pope is Francis. It was 2 weeks ago, after the encyclica. The encyclica was a month ago. And then we say, you are mistaken. Francis died so-and-so. And very empathetically, they say, yes, you are right. I'm sorry. Because that empathy, which is created on purpose to be educated and polite with us in order to engage us, is also artificial. The word here is artificial. The emotions of these kinds of tools used as companions by children and grown-ups, the emotions are artificial. And they are made so in order to engage us. So we have to keep this topic of the data, and when we try to regulate, and those who have started regulating this talked about the frameworks, one important point is how are we going to monitor the data that is used to train, then to test, and then to feedback the models in order to try and guarantee, if possible, that they are not biased, not discriminating, or not fully wrong about things. So we have to take that in mind. There are many uses or use cases for these tools that can be beneficial for democracy. Access to information. The possibility to facilitate bureaucratic tasks, translating, making summaries, organizing or filing documents that in order to be accessible. The possibility, for instance, in the fight against corruption, to find out, analyzing big data, conflicts of interest between people, or money laundering schemes or things like that, or political finance violations or things like that. So there are positive things that we can use these tools for in terms of democracy, public sector governance. I'm not talking about education, that would be another complete hour of conversation, or health or whatever. In public sector governance, there are things that can be used in order to facilitate governance in societies. But the main thing is that we should not delegate the final decision in those tools. So this should be used as a help for public sector decision makers in order to have, for instance, data-driven policies that take into account the reality that they are regulating, instead of just doing theoretical things or ideological things. So they can be used. But at the same time, we should keep a human in the loop. You have heard that, the human in the loop. That is to say, you have to monitor. You have to guarantee accountability. You have to guarantee that if you are the subject of a decision made on the recommendation by AI tools, you have the right to know that the AI recommendation was there. You have to be explained about that. That's explainability of the decisions or the recommendations or predictions. You have to have the right to appeal that decision. So this as a framework. And the human in the loop is not just a person there, but a framework that guarantees accountability, control, transparency, and responsibility. Because humans have many, many biases that these tools seem to solve or avoid, but we have one, which is the automation bias. After using these tools, or any tools, we tend to believe that the machines are right. This is a natural thing. So if you have been using, as a police officer or enforcement authority, a facial recognition, and you have many positive cases, you start believing that every time you use the facial recognition tool, you will get that. So you start monitoring effectively. And that's a problem. We have to have the decision under human beings that can be judged, valued, etc., and use this as a help. But the concern areas for democracy are really very important. I will just go rapidly through some of them. The first one is concentration of power. Concentration of power is one of the main enemies of democracy. That's why we have division of powers and elections and periodic change and judges, etc. If we have 5 companies, 5 platforms that concentrate the computing power of the world, that are located in just one country, one culture, one language, and have the data of everyone around the world because they have trans-border international jurisdiction in a way. They operate around the world. These are 5 companies. If you add the Chinese companies, you have 9 in total. And the Chinese ones are, in fact, one is the Chinese government or the Communist Party, one. So you have a big concentration of power. That's difficult and dangerous for democracies around the world. And even more for countries which has no say in what we are discussing, really, because the discussion is being held there. And for the first time, this was this June, past June, the G7 meeting, one of the most important meetings of developed important countries in the world, which gather presidents and state chiefs of state and the chief of the European Union. That was the club. This time, the CEOs of the 5 platforms were invited at the same table. So think of that. Nobody of us was invited to anything, and there is no representation there. They are companies. So that's one problem. Second problem, fact or fake? Democracy needs dialogue, needs consensus building. And for that, we need factuality. We need to agree on what is real, what is a fact. We can have different opinions. A member of the Supreme Court in Argentina always says that facts are sacred and opinions are free. And you know that because nowadays one journalist used that sentence. So, but we need the facts, we need the factuality. Before we have intermediaries like the press who check before publishing. Of course, that was not enough, not of. But now we have the politicization also of media, which had changed that. But we have social media. So we have had mis- and disinformation always. Pictures, photographs were modified, and some persons were erased in the communist time, you remember, or some persons were added, or things like that. We have had that, so it's not new. But now we have the combination of misinformation and disinformation with social media, smartphones in our pockets. The speed of circulation of this and misinformation is incredible. Clicks circulating that. You have that combined with politicization, fragmentation, and polarization in social media because of manipulation. So we in social media are divided. Ones receive some information about a fact, and the other ones have parallel facts. We have this alternative truth. You have heard that. This alternative truth. Well, no. If here in this room we start a conversation and I say, it's cloudy and rainy, and this side says, Delia, you are wrong. This is a bright day, sunny and warm. Do you think we can achieve any agreement of anything else about what to do next after this? Impossible, because we have lost trust. When we lose facts and we start to receive fakes, and fakes, not only the social media and the smartphones, now we have another thing, which is artificial intelligence. Accessible to everyone. Everyone can create deep fakes. Look at the Carlos Pellegrini students, or the Nacional Buenos Aires student creating nude fakes about their companion students, and circulating and selling that with ChatGPT or Claude or Image or whatever. Very easy, and you can circulate that. And even each time when you use that, image creators or voice creators, they are better. They are better. You look at the picture or at the video and says, can this be true or not? You start doubting, even when the things are real. And this has created what is called the liar's excuse. Because as we start distrusting, is this real or this is fake? Those caught in videos, voices, or whatever, or pictures, can say, no, this has been manipulated. That's not me. I was not there. It was a creation of artificial intelligence. And we have heard that here in Argentina, in order to excuse presence or misdeeds or whatever. So this is a combination which is very, very, very complicated. So if we have misinformation, disinformation, and we are losing trust in what we see, hear, we have resources to content moderation. That was the first reaction with platforms. We have to control content. You have to control content. Not exercising censorship, but in a way, if a company is deciding what I can publish, what I will access in terms of information, in a way they are censoring our freedom to access information and to express ourselves. This is a real case. Facebook punished the owner of the account that published this photo, and of course took the photo out of Facebook because it was a pedophile photo. Impossible. Any human being judging photographs should know, if they have the power to put that out, that it was a very important, iconic picture of the girls from Napalm. Pulitzer Prize. The owner of the account that published the photo, it was, I think, 6 or 7 years ago, was the Prime Minister of Norway. She posted the photo with a message about the harms of war and the need to have peace for children. And she was punished by Facebook because what? Facebook used algorithmic tools to determine what is right and publishable and what will be erased from our platforms or apps. That's the problem. For the algorithm, it was a naked girl. For anyone with some capacity to think or to go and find out, because it was posted by a prime minister and not from a Chinese or autocratic regime, but Norway prime minister, whoever should have think, okay, I will check. And this is an iconic photo. It's not a pedophile case or campaign or things like that. So who should have the authority to moderate content? Private companies, the owners of the platforms, through algorithms, because it's impossible to have an army of human workers looking at everything. It's almost impossible. So algorithms, private companies, governments, judges? Well, that's the question, and that's an important question and has to be to the quality, with the quality of democracy. Elections, apart from electronic voting, which I already said I'm not talking to, we are having now AI candidates. And we have had that in US, in some states, in UK, in France, in Ukraine, and this was Colombia. She was Gaitana, because have a look, always a human-like appearance in order to seem close to us. This was Gaitana. Allow me to say that, she was registered as a candidate for part of the benches available, which is the indigenous benches. It's like a quota at the parliament. She was not elected, but she was registered. And she campaigned, and she appeared in the ballot papers. The idea is that these AI candidates, and there has been some running for executive positions in councils, in small villages, let's say. But the idea is they will contact people and ask, okay, how should I vote this decision that is going, you know, Eliana, the discussions in parliament, in corridors. Every moment, decisions are being made. And this Gaitana offered to consult people online and answer according to the results of those consultations. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But we have candidates already. Then we have the problems of some rights, our rights to data privacy, to privacy. How about facial recognition? This is a real facial recognition tool, and this is the street. I have made it big in order for you to see the numbers, the identification numbers of people walking through the streets, where you go, who you meet with, where you buy things, where you enter, and privacy. And what happened when we use facial recognition to determine whether you are a criminal? Suppose you should be in jail, but you have managed to keep free, and the police are using this kind of tools in order to detect you in the street. Oh, here he is. Police, go there, capture him or her. Probably there's a mistake. Probably the algorithm is hallucinating. Probably the algorithms cannot detect properly your face or your. There are now some tools that don't need to see the complete face, but just the measures, for instance, or the way in which a person is walking, the rhythm, and they detect that. So what happens if the algorithm, because of a technical issue, cannot detect properly the color of your face? You know, the police forces around the world are nowadays being forbidden to use these tools because of the mistakes, because of course you can catch one. But how about a normal person, no criminal antecedents, that goes to jail because of what the machine said, the algorithm said? This has happened in Buenos Aires, at the Retiro station twice. And then civil society start complained, and I will be finishing. This was a real MIT exercise. The black face of the engineer was not recognized until she thought the program she has created was wrong, until she put the white mask, and it worked. And I have many other examples. The exams scandal in UK during COVID. Instead of asking teachers to evaluate students for the final secondary school to the university, they use an algorithm. The algorithm includes, for instance, the postal code. So you can be bright, living in the wrong neighborhood, and you will be punished. This was real. We cannot gather in that time. Look at the masks. And they gathered together saying, fuck the algorithm don't know me. This is the Guardian and Times in that time. This is Netherlands, great scandal with the child care benefits. The algorithm was biased against migrants. So they suffer because of that. The benefits were eliminated. This is again UK, the Royal Mail scandal. 20 years in order to discover that the Horizon software was making mistakes with the ones that are the small places where the Royal Mail works. Arms, detecting the target, whether it is a woman or an extremist, or school, if we are talking of buildings, and ordering to shot. Autonomous agents. This is being discussed nowadays, particularly in US. And the chatbot saying whatever thing, the New York chatbot. This created lots of complaints for business people, small business. Canada created a chatbot, had to go to the judges, to the judiciary, because the chatbot, even being trained on the policies of the company, starts saying and giving information to customers absolutely wrong, and that means high tariffs or loss of money. And there was one who said, I will get back my money and sue the company, and they have judges deciding with or purely on artificial intelligence. 2 weeks ago, I was in a conference on about judges and lawyers and the use of AI. And there was an unknown judge, not an academic or a big name, and he says, I have solved all problems. I have charged my book to ChatGPT. And I have told my staff, which prepare what I sign, if you have a doubt, ask ChatGPT. The only thing ChatGPT has was his book. I haven't found the book, but I'm not very confident on that. The last, a ministry of public procurement in Albany, in order to avoid corruption. It was presented and put in place as the ministry which will control all public procurement of the country. The designer has been sued because of corruption case. So imagine what was in the mind of the human behind the tool. Something to reflect on to close. No comments. It's humor, but it is much more than that. And here's something to read about this. Thank you very much.
Oh boy. Okay, so I know we have a lot of questions. If you could put up the Zoom, folks. I know there are pictures, there are questions on Zoom as well. I am going to walk the room. I'm going to ask, because we have a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions, two things. One, if you sent in a question when you registered, I'm going to ask you to ask it again, because I didn't put those in front of our speaker before she spoke, so that's on me. So if you sent in a question, please don't assume that she already knows it. And two, please be incredibly brief. We have a lot of questions in the room and online, and I want to make sure we get to as many people as we can. Thank you, Delia, in advance. Okay, hands up. I'll start right here in front of me.
Thank you. It was wonderful. My question is, the map that you put at the beginning about democracies, how do countries change on that scale? And how long does it take? Because you still have, the U.S. in blue, and I would argue with that right now.
Yeah. For instance, United States, in this issue of the index, has gone down because of Trump administration in terms of rule of law, particularly rule of law. There are all these indexes doesn't use just one measurement or area. They all use some of the areas I showed around the concept of democracy. So rule of law, participation, representation, with all that is being done in US in terms of identification and election rules. Yeah. Last week we have another presentation from the president. So this time the United States has gone down because of, particularly I think, rule of law and elections.
Okay. Dina,
no, it's
Dina,
year by year.
We don't have time. I'm so sorry. We have so many questions.
Year by year, they collect the data, and they have areas and many inputs in those indexes.
Okay, we move back here.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Delia. It was a pleasure to listen to you and all the ideas that you share with us. I have a question that is maybe more philosophical than technical, but one of the most deep things that you said is about trust. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'm more like as you know, more like a technological optimist than a pessimist, but there's certain critics about AI and the uses of AI that have to be with trust, if you can trust the results, the decisions, etc. What I think that is the problem and maybe the issue, and it is more connected with the younger generations, is that they don't even trust human decisions, human facts, human traditional media. That's why it's the same for us, for them, to show them, for example, a fake image or a actual image or a real image in a way. So I think that there's a deeper concern about democracy and institutions in terms of trust, not only because of the technology, but why we trust so much in technology is because sometimes, in a way, we are not trusting the traditional institutions, the traditional media, etc.
Of course.
So it's like the same in a way.
You are right, but the studies that check, and it is very difficult to check the trust in societies, have a clear point around 2010, which includes smartphones and the proliferation of platforms, social media apps, Facebook and WhatsApp and Telegram and all that. And from that moment on, the trust is declining. So there is a correlation. I agree with you that young generations doesn't trust traditional media, let's say. And even when you read the surveys on how and where do you get your information from, even grown-ups are starting to say TV or radio or social media. And the new generations, of course, use the media in their context. But there is not the only characteristic from the sociological point of view of the new generation. They are much more individualistic. They are separated from the rest of us. They are in a kind of bubble. And these tools also enhance the power of bubbles because they can be used by those managing the techniques. So I agree with you, this is not the only cause of trust declining. And in democracy, trust is declining because democracy is not giving results or producing the benefits of democracy for all, and it's not well functioning. But this is one factor. And fact and fake has been absolutely enhanced with the use of these technologies for the creation of the disinformation and for the circulation. When you post something which is fake, and you have the time to check, the fact checkers, for instance, they need time. They post the answer. Look at Chequeado, por ejemplo, in Twitter. Chequeado is the Argentine fact checker organization. Okay. A fake was published in Twitter. 3 or 4 hours later, or even a day later, Chequeado published false information, false. It's impossible to guarantee that the Twitter, the post from Chequeado will go to the same audiences that received the first information, and that it will be transmitted to the same WhatsApp groups that receive the same information, the fake one. So the fight against mis and disinformation is much more complicated now than in 20 or 30 years before.
Okay, we have another question. This is so uplifting. We have another question back here.
Well, my question is also about trust. I want to know if there's any difference between ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, because I was told lately that you can trust more what Claude informs you. Is that true?
I prefer Claude, personally. I use these tools to check them. That's the reality. I don't write my papers with that, but I always check, ask the hard questions, and as a checking, I know the answer before because I am a specialist on something. So I check permanently because they evolve very quickly. At the moment, I would say Claude, for me, is the best at the moment. But Kimi, which is the Chinese new one launched last week, is very good, very good. So good, and so many people has accessed the tool that the subscriptions has been stopped by the Chinese company on Monday because they cannot serve the demand of all the people. And all Chinese large language models, which is the technical name of this, generative AI tools, all of them are open source. So the black box, in part, not wholly, but in part, is open. And many companies in the Western world are using these tools. Of course, this opens a geopolitical scenario, which is very complicated. Last evening in US, there was an important meeting of the administration, the Trump administration, with the CEOs of the companies in order to try to discuss whether they should allow American citizens and companies to use that software, which is free, instead of using you have to pay for American 5 or 7 ChatGPTs. So it's a complicated issue. And you can start saying, Gemini is very good at this, and Claude is very good at that. And for images, because now there are hundreds of these tools. So images is one thing, creating videos is another. And in all of these areas, you can create things that are reflecting reality, and you can cheat. And you can create slop, for instance. The deepfakes usually belong to the photographs or the voices. But now the video AI generative tools create false things that are called slop.
Okay, we also have a question online. Gwen, I believe you had a question. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for a fantastic, very informative presentation. Very quickly, on the positive hope sign, my nephew who worked for many years at Apple was just contracted by the Washington Post media group, which is a very large media group, to design a way to certify that their stories, their publications, are written by humans. Not just say we think that this is a human, but certify it, which is a step further. And apparently there are some of these things being developed, but he lives right there in Buenos Aires and he's working on that. On the despair side, of course, as you know, Peter Thiel is pronounced, the German American, has settled in Argentina. And many have found this very disturbing, particularly because he has deep biases that are not democratic. He himself says that he does not believe in democracy, and that he has had apparently 4 meetings with the president. So my question is this an issue that well, we know already that apparently he has influenced some of what has happened with the glaciares. So I don't know, what do you have to say about this fellow and his participation in Argentina?
Of course, that generated concerns for many people. And what I think is that we have to learn about and understand and investigate. One of the books that is in the last slide is the book written by the CEO of the company, the associate of Mr. Thiel, which is Digital Republic or something like that, the title you have there. And it is very clear what they believe and what they think these technologies should be used to. So they are absolutely transparent. And the main idea is that the technology or the technological sector should cooperate with governments for the sake of security. So the main area of the programs that the company is using and developing has to do with military AI or technologies, or with data. Particularly, they run the health system databases in UK. So they have plenty of very important data. And they say this should be developed and worked with governments, not as a private thing for marketing and consumers' needs or to play with that, but for the sake of security of the countries. And the model they have in mind is the cooperation in the time of the creation of the nuclear weapons, where the state and the industry work together, and this for a long time creates a deterrent situation vis-a-vis war, because everybody knows that if we start launching nuclear weapons, it will be the end of every part on the conflict. So this is what they say. Of course, in Argentina in particular, they have bought some properties, but for the time being, as far as I know, there is nothing operating now with the system. What we should do as citizens is to inform ourselves, to ask or use access to information tools in order to ask once there are plans to do something, what are the plans, how are we going to manage the protection of data, privacy, rights, etc. That's for the time being. And about the first part of your question on the Washington Post, you mentioned, or New York Times?
Yes, it was the Washington Post, a whole conglomeration of media.
Yeah,
of
the New York Times have the same, trying to detect, and many scientific journals have started to use these kind of tools. Of course, they can be cheated because it's AI against AI, but they are starting to use that because in the first moments after 2022, November 2022, the amount of papers presented has increased incredibly, with supposed data or experiments or evidence on some things that in fact has been synthetically, artificially created. So they have started to control that. There are cases, for instance, of eye illnesses that has been described in scientific journals, and then they have been detected in other countries with other doctors applying the treatment. It was false. There was no eye illness called so-and-so that has been discovered by a scientist. And if you look at Amazon, for instance, they are taking care of a number of books that has been offered through Amazon, which have nothing to do with the normal speed of books publications in the previous years. So they are suspecting that, and traditional media or serious journals are trying to stop these artificial things.
We have a question back here.
Thank you. Thanks for a very, very, very illustrated conference, really. I have a question. I think we agree that IA should be regulated. So how much and by whom? By the industry, by governments, by civil society, the academia, all of them together? And what could we do as citizens besides being informed? How could we act on this? Because UA, the European Union, is regulating artificial intelligence, but in Argentina, it has never been regulated, and moreover, the government has said that it will not be regulated at all. So it's a serious worry.
Question. In terms of regulation and frameworks, guidelines, in order to put some limits on this and guarantee responsible use and responsible design of AI, the progress has been, first, self-regulation by the platforms. Claude, for instance, Anthropic, has a constitution for the AI, like our constitution, with the principles. That is supposed to guide algorithms when they decide something. Okay. Self-regulation was the first step. Then I would say 10 years ago, a standard setting starts, international fora, UNESCO, OECD, start saying, okay, these are the principles, Stanford University, institutes were created. These are the principles you should follow. Safety, data safety, cybersecurity for the tools, checking biases, etc. Then it was a move towards hard law, international law. We have the EU, which was the first, although it was developed before ChatGPT. That's one of the problems. It took so long to develop and approve the act that many people say it's too general in order to capture these new generative AI tools. But nevertheless, you have that. And then it turns to international law, and Europe approved, not the European Union, the European Council, approved the first mandatory convention on AI and human rights. Of course, they invited every country in the world to sign, like any human rights convention. Nowadays, there are 40 countries around that has signed this, which is mandatory. So it means obligations for the countries. And you can go to the local, national level and try to regulate. In Latin America, Brazil is the country which has gone far in terms of regulating some of these tools or the use of these tools. We don't have that. The US government had a trend, or was following a trend in February 2025 when Trump administration took office. The Biden administration has created a voluntary framework with guidelines and standards that the companies should follow in order to develop and deploy these kind of tools. With the coming in office of Trump administration, the decision was, we are not going to regulate this because we cannot stop innovation. So the idea behind is regulation is against innovation. They have plenty of examples of innovation together with regulation in airplanes, cars, etc., medicines, for instance. So they have the experience to balance the two, but the decision of the government was no regulation. And the guy sitting at the table of the G7, of course, has a very important lobby power to manage these decisions.
Yeah.
There has been a change. There has been a change in the administration position vis-a-vis these tools in April. The first conflict has to do with Anthropic and the Pentagon, when Anthropic says, okay, you can use my AI generative tools, but not for surveillance of American citizens and not for autonomous arms, weapons. And of course the government says, no, I will use the as I like. So Anthropic went to the judges in April, and the process is still going, but the first steps of the processes were in favor of Anthropic as the creator of the tool. So Anthropic was punished as a bad provider for all companies, so very complicated issue. Then Claude announced Mythos. That was end of May. Mythos, which publicly can be known as Fable, but Mythos was so powerful that Anthropic decided not to put it available for the public and make that decision public. They say, we are going to share this tool with only some persons, some companies, banks, governments, because Mythos has the capacity, analyzing big data, to discover and hack all programs in the world. So it was very dangerous for banks and very dangerous for governments. And it was a self-decision. So we are not going to use that public. We are circulating it. It was 30 receivers, very few in the world. When that appears, the government and the SEC, the Security Exchange Authority, the market of shares in US, and the banks and the Treasury Secretary immediately summon the important persons there and say, okay, this is very dangerous. We have to regulate this. So after big discussion, President Trump signed an executive order. An executive order is like the decretos de necesidad y urgencia. They have the power of law without the Congress, but immediately, one signature, and this is law. And it established that the companies should, but it is not mandatory, give access to the new tools where they are very, very powerful to the government for 30 days to the government to test that, and then we will see what will happen. But, and this was signed with the CEOs participating in the discussion. In the last fortnight, 15 days, there has been another development in US, and they are working on the ask of the CEOs to regulate this, to regulate these technologies, mandatory, at least for the most powerful ones. It's Hassabis, for instance, from Google, that has even written a blog post in order to ask governments, and of course the government, to create frameworks and regulate this technology for the sake of rule of law, rights, and security. Again, coming back to the conversation of security. So there is a trend that is changing, and when it changes in the US, it will change around the world. China has gone far more active in terms of regulation. They have rules and they enforce the rules. So it's complicated. And coming to your last point, who, of course, if we are talking about hard law, it is the government institutions, but these issues cannot be regulated without those who know the tools, because this is a technical issue. I remember in 2002, I was at the OECD conference, and I was talking about these topics, and it was an audience of 1,000 public officials around the world. And I asked, who of you is a programmer here? Only the hands up of my director at Transparency International, who is a PhD on artificial intelligence. One hand. So after that I say, you cannot regulate this alone because you know nothing about this. So you have to invite people. And civil society is already working for more than 15 years in this, with lots of NGOs around the world working for fair AI, equality and AI, and things like that. Not in Argentina. In Argentina, there is one foundation that is working on artificial intelligence, but it is the only one I know.
Okay, I know that we have many, many more questions. We do not, however, have any more time. So my apologies to anyone who did not have a chance to ask a question. I know that we have the slides available for everybody, and just keep being curious. We all are. Thank you so much for an incredibly informative talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We do have a small gift to say thank you. We have many artists. Please, we have many artists in the club. This was painted by. This was painted by Adriana Palma, and it's one of our artists. She is not here today, but. Thank you. Thank you so much. We learned so much. Now go have some coffee and some sugar.
And you have my address in the slides? the Twitter address if you want to send me a direct message with
If
questions.
anyone missed that,
I
and
am
if anyone
available.
online missed that, her contact information is on the slides.
Send
So
me questions,
please
I
send
will-
questions. She is so smart.
I
Thank
will
you.
answer.
Thank you
Thank
so
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie.